In today's note, we are going to be at simple. This is our first note in our finance unit, and it's the easiest way to look at calculating interest in terms of money. But for lack of another word, it's the simplest way. So simple interest is calculated as a percentage of the principal on an investment or loan using the formula I equals RT, so P times R times T, where I equals interest earned, which is accumulated over time. Principal for P is the principal, which is the original amount or the initial amount. So basically this is whatever you are starting with when you're saving money, or starting with when you are borrowing money. So whatever amount that you borrow, that's your principal. R is the interest rate, expressed as a decimal. So we're usually in the question it will be given to us as a percent, but in the formula you need to use decimal. And then T is the length of time, and it's expressed in terms of years. That's the key thing, it needs to be in years. As well, you have simple interest is added to the principal to determine the total amount. So if you want to know the total amount of your overall investment or loan, you take the interest that's earned, add it to the principal or what you start with, and then that is your total amount. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to look at two short calculations. So again, these are calculations that you have to do before you get into the interest formula or the simple interest formula. You may have to write these down, or these could be quick calculations that you before you start, but we're just going to go through them just so you are aware that you have to do. Remember the interest rate, or R. In the question, it will be given to us as a percent, but we need to turn it to a decimal for the formula. Remember that percent means out of 100, so if I want to turn 13% into a decimal, I have to do 13 divided by 100, which gives me 0.13. Anytime you're given percent, whatever it is, even if there's a decimal in the percent, 2.5, still divided by 100, so 2.5 divided by 100, 0.025 is the actual decimal number. And same with 0.5%, 0.5 divided by 100, 0. You may be able to do this in your head, which is fine. Just keep in mind that you have to do before you plug it in. As well with time, the time in the formula is expressed in terms of years, but we know that we don't always express time in years. Right? It could be months, weeks, or days. So depending on what the question gives us, we need to convert it again from whatever term or value or measurement we're given to years. Do that by dividing. For example, if I have 24 months, I'm going to take 24 and divide it by 12, because there are 12 months in a year. Then that will give me an answer of 2. So that means there are 2 years, or if I say I have a term or a length of 24 months, that simply means 2 years. 14 weeks, because it's weeks, I'm going to divide by 52. There are 52 weeks in a year. I'm going to leave it as a fraction unless it reduces to an exact value. And then for days, 82 days, I'm going to divide by 365, because there are 365 days. So in the simple interest formula, again, the reason we did this is because time must be expressed in terms of years. So depending on what time is given by, right, if it's given in months, we have to divide that by 12. If we're given it in weeks, we have to divide it by 52. And if we're given it in days, we have to divide by 3. If we're given the time in years, we don't have to worry. We can just leave it as years. The whole idea from this part is to get the time into So we're going to look at a quick example of simple interest. So calculate how much interest is earned if $2,000 is invested at 4.5% simple interest for 26 weeks. First step that I'm going to always do is I'm going to write out my variables or my letters from the formula. The goal from here is to fill in as much as I can from the question. If I go back and read it, it says calculate how much interest. This means I am looking for the I. How much interest is earned if $2,000 is invested. So that's what I'm starting with. So that means my P value is 2,000. Invested at 4.5% simple interest, which means my R value, 4.5%. But remember, we just talked about that 4.5 has to be divided by 100. Turn it to a decimal, 0.045. So 4.5% simple interest for 26 weeks. 26 weeks, I need to convert that to years. 26 weeks divided by 52 weeks in a year, 0.5. Now that I have all my numbers, only one missing piece, I'm going to write out my formula and fill in the information. 2,000 times 0.045 times 0.5 give me my final answer. One calculation multiplying these numbers together, and you should get 45. Means, therefore, $45 interest Part B asks, how much is the investment worth? So this goes back to that second formula, that little small one. If I want to figure out how much the investment is worth, that's basically looking for what is the total amount. Remember, the total amount is equal to the principal, or what you start with, plus the interest that you earn. So in this case, my principal, I started with 2,000. I earned $45 in interest, means my total amount in the end, $2,045. Therefore, investment worth 2,000. In the next part of the note, the next three examples, we're going to use the simple interest triangle to help us find formulas, help us solve for other values. So we're looking for not just the interest now, but the principal, interest rate, time. So the questions may vary because we may want to know how much do I need to invest or how much do I need to borrow or save. It might also ask us to find at what rate should we invest at, or how long we should invest it. So we can use this triangle to help us figure that out. We've seen this triangle before when we looked at trig. We've also seen it, or we also may have seen it in science. So again, the way it works is you cover up the value that you're looking for, and then whatever's left over is your formula. If the letter's over top of another one, that means it's divide. If it's beside another one, that means it's multiply. For example, if I'm solving for P, or how much, what my principal is, I would cover the P up, and I'm left with I over R times T. That's my formula to solve for P. If I wanted to solve for R, I would cover R up, and I'm left with R is equal to I, it's on top, over P times T. And there's a gap, they're still side by side, so it's P. And lastly, if I needed to solve for the time, P is equal to I over times R. So I can use these three formulas, or I can use the triangle to help me figure out what formula I need to use, what operation I need to answer these questions. So in example 2, start out the same way. I'm going to write down my variables so I can fill them in, hopefully. From the question, how much principal? Right off the bat, how much principal? That's what we're looking for. If I don't know my p-value, how much principal is needed to earn $500 in interest? That means my I value is 500. In 2 years, 2.5% simple interest. So t is 2. I don't need to do anything to it because it's in years. My R value 2.5 is the percent. I need to divide that by 100. 0.025. You don't need to write down that step of showing showing that division by 100. I'm going to do that just to show people where this 0.025 number is coming from. So once I have all my information, I know what I'm looking for. It's the only missing piece. I can write out my formula. The P equals I over RT. Whether you just get it from the top or you use the triangle, fine. I have 500 divided by 0.025 times 2. And in the end, I should get that P $10,000. So that means, therefore, principal $10,000. So I need to have $10,000 in the beginning, or originally, earn $500 in 2. Example 3. What simple interest rate is needed to get $7,000 to grow to $10,000 in 5 years? So I'm going to, again, same steps, write out formula, or write out the variables, fill in what I know from the question. So what simple interest rate? First part, so that means I'm looking for the R value. Needed to get $7,000. So that's my initial $7,000. Grow to $10,000 5 years. So I'm going to write down the easy one. Time is 5 because it's 5 years. But $10,000, it doesn't say that the 10,000 is interest. What it sounds like is that the 7,000 is going to grow to the 10,000, makes the $10,000 in the question total amount. Go back to our notes, or the last page. The total amount is the principal plus the interest. If I want to figure out what just the interest is, I need to take that total amount of $10,000, subtract what I started with, which was the 7,000, and whatever's left over is the interest. In this case, $3,000. So basically this question is saying, what do I need to do, or at what rate do I need to do to get an initial amount of $7,000, earn $3,000 in interest, which in the end, my total amount, $10,000. So you do have to be careful when reading the question. So everything's filled in except for one, which is good. So I'm going to solve for R and go back up to the triangle or the formulas. So R is equal to I over P. I'm going to go through and fill in my information. So $3,000 divided by 7,000 times 5. And I get an R value of 0.6. One thing you want to keep in mind, this is the decimal. Decimal, not the percent. Remember from the question, we had to turn our percentage into decimal. So that means when going backwards, or from going to this number percent, to multiply it by 100. In actuality, therefore the rate 8.6%. not 0.0 or 0.08. That's the decimal. Keep that in mind. Use the decimal version in the formula. We have to turn that into. Finally, the last question. I start out the same way. I, P, R, E. I'm going to try to fill in as much as I can from the question. So the question says, how long? And right off the bat, how long? That means we're looking for time. We want to know what is the time. How long would it take 15,000, or sorry, not 15,000, 1,500 to grow $2,000? Again, similar to the last one, starting with $1,500 or $1,500, we want to grow that to $2,000. Remember, the 2,000 is not interest, the total amount. So to figure out the interest, we need to do the total minus the principal, $500. And the last part, simple interest rate of 3. So 3% divided by 100, 0. Decimal. Have everything filled in except for one piece, which is good. So we're solving for t, and go back up, look at the triangle, or the formula that we had written down. I divided by R, $5,000 divided by 100, or $500 divided by 50, 0.3. Sorry, 0.0. And in the end, we should get a time of 11.1. Therefore, 0.1 years. So this is an overview of simple interest. Again, it's basically one formula, and then we can use it as a triangle to find the other values. But again, the main thing is how to use simple interest, calculate interest, or the principal or the rate time.